This is the story of Moses. Born during a time when the Pharaoh of Egypt had ordered all male Hebrew children to be drowned, Moses' mother Jochebed hid him for 3 months. When she could no longer hide him, she placed him in a basket and set him afloat on the Nile River. The basket was discovered by the Pharaoh's daughter, who took pity on the child and decided to raise him as her own son. Moses grew up in the Egyptian court, learning all the wisdom of the Egyptians and becoming a mighty warrior. One day, Moses saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew slave. In a fit of anger, Moses killed the Egyptian and hid the body in the sand. When Pharaoh heard about this, he sought to kill Moses, but Moses fled from Pharaoh and went to Midian. There he sat down by a well and helped the daughters of Jethro, a priest of Midian, water their flocks. Jethro gave Moses his daughter Zipporah in marriage, and she bore him a son. Moses became a shepherd for Jethro's flocks. One day, while tending the flock of Jethro, Moses led the flock to the far side of the desert and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire from within a bush. So God called to him from within the bush, "Moses, Moses." And Moses said, "Here I am, do not come any closer." God said, "Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. So I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them up out of that land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey. So now go, I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt." But Moses said to God, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" And God said, "I will be with you." So Moses returned to Egypt with his brother Aaron, and they gathered all the elders of the Israelites together. Aaron told them everything the Lord had said to Moses, and he performed the signs before the people, and they believed. Then Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh and said, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says, 'Let my people go, so they may hold a festival to me in the desert.'" Pharaoh said, "Who is the Lord that I should obey him and let Israel go? I do not know the Lord, and I will not let Israel go." But the Lord sent terrible plagues on Egypt. The water turned to blood, frogs overran the land, gnats and flies tormented the people, livestock died, boils broke out on people and animals, hail destroyed the crops, locusts devoured what was left, darkness covered the land for 3 days, and finally the firstborn sons of every family died. After the final plague, Pharaoh relented and allowed the Israelites to leave Egypt. The Israelites set out from Ramses and marched toward Succoth. But after the Israelites had gone, Pharaoh and his officials changed their minds and said, "What have we done? We have let the Israelites go and have lost their services." So he had his chariot made ready and took his army with him. When Pharaoh drew near, the Israelites looked back, and there they were, the Egyptians marching after them. They were terrified and cried out to the Lord. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and all that night the Lord drove the sea back with a strong east wind and turned it into dry land. The waters were divided, and the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground, with a wall of water on their right and on their left. The Egyptians pursued them, and all Pharaoh's horses and chariots and horsemen followed them into the sea. But at dawn, the Lord looked down on the Egyptian army from the pillar of fire and cloud and threw the Egyptian army into confusion. He made the wheels of their chariots come off so that they were hard to drive. And the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea so that the waters may flow back over the Egyptians and their chariots and horsemen." Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and at daybreak the sea went back to its place. Then Moses led Israel from the Red Sea, and they went into the desert of Shur. For 3 days they traveled in the desert without finding water. When they came to Marah, they could not drink its water because it was bitter. Then Moses cried out to the Lord, and the Lord showed him a piece of wood. He threw it into the water, and the water became fit to drink. In the desert of Sin, the whole community of the Israelites grumbled against Moses and Aaron. So Moses said to Aaron, "Tell the whole community of Israel, come before the Lord, for he has heard your grumbling." That evening quail came and covered the camp, and in the morning there was a layer of dew around the camp. When the dew was gone, flakes like frost on the ground appeared on the desert floor. In the 3rd month after the Israelites left Egypt, on the very day, they came to the desert of Sinai. After they left Rephidim, they entered the desert of Sinai, and Israel camped there in the desert in front of the mountain. Then Moses went up to God, and the Lord called to him from the mountain and said, "This is what you are to say to the house of Jacob, and what you are to tell the people of Israel. You yourselves have seen what I did to Egypt, and how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now if you obey me fully and keep my covenant, then out of all nations you will be my treasured possession. Although the whole earth is mine, you will be for me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words you are to speak to the Israelites." And God spoke all these words, "I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven above, or on the earth beneath, or in the waters below. You shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God, for the Lord will not hold anyone guiltless who misuses his name. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. Honor your father and your mother, so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving you. You shall not murder, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not steal, you shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house, you shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his manservant or maidservant, his ox or donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor." When the people saw that Moses was so long in coming down from the mountain, they gathered around Aaron and said, "Come, make us gods who will go before us. As for this fellow Moses who brought us up out of Egypt, we don't know what has happened to him." Aaron answered them, "Take off the gold earrings that your wives, your sons and your daughters are wearing, and bring them to me." So all the people took off their earrings and brought them to Aaron. After he had fashioned it with a tool, he made it into a calf. Then they said, "These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt." When Moses approached the camp and saw the calf and the dancing, his anger burned, and he threw the tablets out of his hands, breaking them to pieces at the foot of the mountain. But God is merciful and full of compassion. So Moses pleaded with God to forgive the people, and God relented and did not bring on them the disaster he had threatened. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Carve out 2 stone tablets like the first ones, and I will write on them the words that were on the first tablets, which you broke." So Moses chiseled out 2 stone tablets like the first ones, and went up Mount Sinai early in the morning, as the Lord had commanded him, and he carried the 2 stone tablets in his hands. The Israelites wandered in the desert for 40 years. During this time, God provided for all their needs. When Moses was 120 years old, the Lord said to him, "You will not cross this Jordan into the land I am giving the Israelites. You may view the land from across the river, but you will not enter it. So Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in Moab, as the Lord had said. He was buried in Moab, in the valley opposite Beth Peor, but to this day no one knows where his grave is. Moses was 120 years old when he died, yet his eyes were not weak, nor his strength gone. The Israelites grieved for Moses in the plains of Moab for 30 days, until the time of weeping and mourning was over. Moses is one of the most important figures in the Bible. He led the Israelites out of slavery in Egypt. He received the 10 Commandments from God. And he taught the Israelites how to live in a way that was pleasing to God. Moses' story is a story of faith, courage, and obedience. It is a story that continues to inspire people all over the world today.